I'm empty-handed next week. We get double.
No, well, that's fantastic. Just being here. That's what we want. Okay. Um, so, Kedar Kenu Bakodesh, I will start with a quote. I don't know if anyone has seen the movie A Beautiful Mind.
Nope.
No? No
With
takers?
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe, yes,
Yeah,
as
good memory for
John
movies.
Nash. Okay,
Did he
well,
have a lobotomy? Why is it a beautiful mind?
yeah, he's like a mathematician who ends
Yeah, I
up
saw
It's
that.
going
having,
crazy.
yeah, having some sort of mental
Yeah,
breakdown.
it's always a
Right.
euphemism in these titles. Oh, it's such a
Yeah.
beautiful mind. He's such a tragic figure. He's dead now. I hate that stuff.
You would have box of tea outside. I brought it inside
Oh,
for you.
thank you
Sorry,
very
was that a
much.
little too cynical to start things
It's
off?
okay.
Sorry.
Well, no. So the point is, he's a mathematician, and he starts kind of over noticing patterns. So the quote is as follows: "I still see things that are not there. I just choose not to acknowledge them, like a diet of the mind. I just choose not to indulge certain appetites, like my appetite for patterns, perhaps my appetite to imagine and to dream." That is John Nash from A Beautiful Mind, and that takes us into apophenia. Any takers on what apophenia is?
No,
So
but Google will tell us.
yes, so apophenia is so. Let's back up. Humans are pattern-seeking people, right? Or creatures. From the time that we're born, we're wired to notice patterns, but you can overuse that, right? You can find patterns or think you see patterns where none exist.
Logical fallacies, correlation
So
versus causation.
those are argumentative. I'm talking about like actually representative, like seeing meaning in the colon and the end parentheses as a smiley face, right? So maybe 100 years ago you could say that didn't really have any meaning, and maybe now because of convention it does have meaning. But looking at the front of that car and seeing the headlights and the grill, and that's a smiley face, you're seeing something that is not there, because your brain is assigning meaning to it because it's looking for patterns, right? That's the confused, eccentric guy who sees everything is connected, um, in the meme. But the idea is we're going to be talking about structure and patterns in Shir HaShirim, but I always want to sort of be cautious when we talk about these kinds of things, because there's a tendency for people to create structure or see structure that is maybe not necessarily there. So it's something that I think is important to kind of be on our toes about. The difference between pattern and hallucination is if you look up at a cloud and you kind of stare at it for a little bit and it looks like Godzilla, so that could be apophenia. If you look up in the sky and there are no clouds and you still see Godzilla, that's hallucination.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
also, I mean, when people are at these like fan conventions and they're like totally fanboying out to their like favorite author or TV producer or something like, and the symbolism about
Right.
the X character and the Y character, like how did you ever think to put that in? And the guy will be like, I didn't put that in. It's a nice observation. It's a cool idea. But I didn't put that there.
Right.
Like that was just
So
unintentional.
that's really interesting
Who
because
said that to you?
No, I'm saying I see this all
yeah,
the
you see
time.
that, I see that a lot too. They're like, oh, there was this Easter egg.
Which fan club have you gone
No, I'm just saying this is a thing that happens a lot.
That you see a lot. Which fan club have you gone
I don't know.
to?
So,
So
yeah.
I guess one of the questions is in literature or the arts, is that thing that people are noticing there, whether or not the author intended for it to be there.
Right. But I'm
I
just
think
saying,
that's an
like,
open question.
right?
But yes,
If the
people
author,
definitely.
right. You
Right.
can find whatever you want, but like the author probably intended. Here are the themes that I'm going to explore in this work. And if somebody sees a theme that's totally like not intended to be explored, you could logically argue that the theme is there because it makes sense that it's there. But like the author didn't put it there. Like
Right.
I'm
Right.
just saying.
But is that pattern or interpretation?
Yeah. So that I think that's a fair question, and I would probably weigh in a little bit more towards interpretation than pattern for something like that. But okay, we're going to continue our quest to try to find meaning in Shir HaShirim. And this week we're going to look at structure. I don't think that structure can directly provide meaning, but I think it can provide context and help us kind of get to meaning. Um, So just a little bit of historical background. For a long time in the modern era, people looked at Shir HaShirim as just a random collection of songs. If it's a haphazard, cobbled together bunch of love songs or marriage poems, then by definition, there's no narrative progression, and then it's very hard to find any meaning because everything is just kind of stuck together there. Today, I think the view is exactly the opposite. Everyone that you will ask, from the academics to anybody else, will tell you Shir HaShirim has a very definite structure. They will just all disagree about what that definite structure is. You have people that will see 21 different poems inside of Shir HaShirim based on different ways of breaking out, not just from the psuchos and stumus, but based on themes and how
Written by
one
different
theme.
people.
Maybe written by
Compiled.
different people, maybe
Compiled.
not. But
Right.
the idea is that it was compiled in a way that is organized and structured in an intentional kind of way. And I think we're going to try to flesh that out a little bit more. In terms of literature, structure of literature in general, there are some basic conventions. So we talked way long ago when we were doing biblical criticism about chiastic structure, and we touched on a little bit in Sefer Daniel also. That is a structure of writing something where you're intentionally structuring, ordering what you're writing in a way to have a pattern that conveys meaning, right? When you have a chiastic structure, so it's like an X, right? And the order of the information is structured so that the stuff at the end parallels the stuff at the beginning, and the focus on it focuses you into what is in the middle. There are other structures in terms of like narrative progression. You have things like the pyramid structure. So when you're telling a story, right, usually there's like, you had this in like English 101 in college, right? There's like ascending, conflict and action, and then descending,
Climax and
right,
then
right,
resolution.
and then exactly. There are historically things like ring structure, which, when God willing, one day we get to Vayikra, we could talk about Mary Douglas and the ring structure of Vayikra. You see that kind of reinterpreted in Joseph Campbell and eventually Dan Harmon. In the hero journey, like the hero has to leave somewhere and then go have an adventure and come back. We're not going to get too deep into literature structuralism, or the other sort of adjunct branch of that is called semiotics, which is like the study of symbolism, and they've got all kinds of like semiotic squares. I don't think that really furthers a lot of the conversation. What I would like to do, understanding that I have a very accomplished musical person in the audience, is use musical structure to help us understand Shir HaShirim structure. What you have in front of you underneath the second image, you're the musical guy.
What?
You're the musical guy.
Okay.
I'm outing you as the musical guy.
Okay.
What you have over there is one example of structure that I think. Well, so Cheryl Exum kind of breaks up the book of Shir HaShirim in that bottom image into 6 different themes or parts, and then shows how one theme is connected to another. I think essentially what you have over there is what you would call in music either rondo or maybe movement with variation. So you have the theme and it's repeated, and then you have like a contrast to the theme. So if you're thinking of like popular music, so there's a refrain, right? There's a chorus, and then there's other information in between that chorus that is different from the chorus, and then you come back to the chorus, right? That's essentially, without labeling it that way, that's what she sees over there. Another interesting approach that I saw was someone who actually spent like maybe a half a page on it, but he called Shir HaShirim Ritornello. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but the idea is that it returns, it repeats. So I think we were talking the other week about how the end of Shir HaShirim is kind of like a letdown, because she says Barach Dodi, like just go run away, and that's like how do you end a story that way? The answer is that it's not an end. It's the end of a song that tells you go back to the beginning and then continue, right? It's like row 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 your boat or whatever it is that the song is never done. It might sound like an ending, but the ending is telling you to go back to the beginning. Okay, what I'd like to do now, if everyone could take one version of Shir HaShirim, is do a little exercise in finding patterns. I need two people who are going to find terms in the first two prakim and two people who are going to find terms in the last parak. Which? Okay, who wants parak aleph and bet? Don't know. Okay, we're gonna just divide the table in half. What's that? Okay, you guys are parak chet, and you guys are aleph and bet. Okay. I'm gonna give you the terms that you're gonna look for, and I'll even tell you within which psukim to look for it. The idea here, broadly, is that parak aleph through, let's say, bet Zion, so 1 through 2:7, you will find an abundance of parallels in chapter 8, psukim gimel through yudalid, but in reverse. So in chapter 8, you're essentially gonna start at 14 and work your way down to 3, and in parak aleph, you're gonna start at aleph and work your way through bet Zion. Is that incredibly confusing?
Yes.
Okay. Again,
What am I supposed to be
I'm
looking?
going to give you the terms in a minute, but the idea here is that we're going to try to find parallels between the last chapter and the first chapter, except that the last chapter is flipped, so that we're going to start from the end and work our way back, and in the first chapter we're going to work our way from the beginning on. Okay. So in Perek Aleph, somewhere between pasuk Bet and Zion, call it out when you have it. I need the name Shlomo. And then, what's that?
Go ahead, just do the first one.
No, we're going to start from pasuk Bet and on.
Okay. Because
In pasuk Hey. Okay. Now in Perek Chet, I need also Shlomo somewhere between pasuk Yud Bet and Yud Dalid.
If these aren't numbered, that makes this harder.
Oh, so let's get you something that has it numbered.
Yeah.
this one has you
Yud Aleph.
That's the Hebrew. Perfect.
I should have just brought an art scroll sitter.
Oh yeah, I can give you an art scroll sitter.
Well, there you go.
You ask for it, you get it.
Toyota.
Okay, so so we've got Shlomo in the beginning of Perek Aleph and at the end of Perek Chet. Now we need my own vineyard. Karmi Shali, Karim Shali, something along the lines of the woman is talking about her own vineyard. I need it in, again, somewhere in Perek Chet between Yud Bet and Yud Dalid, and somewhere in Perek Aleph between Beis and Zion.
We have it in Karmi Shali.
Karmi Shali in Perek Aleph Pasuk Vav. Okay, and in Perek Chet, somewhere between Yud Bet and Yud Dalid, I need my own vineyard, Karim Shali. Yud Dalid.
Karmi. You'd bet.
Yud Bet, very good.
Also the next pasuk.
Hmm?
In both cases, it's one pasuk after.
Okay, what about again somewhere between in Perek Chet, somewhere between Yud Bet and Yud Dalid, Chaverim.
Yeah, next one. Next pasuk.
We have Chaveracha.
Chaverim, Chaverecha, something about companions, friends.
The next
Yeah.
pasuk. That's Zion.
Okay, what about again in the same spot? Let us make haste. Let us run.
Yeah. Yep. There you go.
Barach,
Okay.
Ravatz, something along the lines of running away, making haste. Yes.
Point taken.
Wait, we're not done. There's more. In Perek Chet, pasuk Yud Aleph, do you have silver? And in Perek Aleph, somewhere between Chet and Yud Aleph, I need silver.
The last word in Yud Aleph.
Well, it's in.
That comes
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
Yod Aleph. It's
Hakasef, yeah.
Kasef.
Okay, so you both have Kesef. Okay, what about Shaddai, my breasts? In Perek Chet, pasuk Yud, and in Parak Aleph, somewhere
Got 'em.
between 12 and 14.
I'm sure it's
Here it says she doesn't have them. Where is it?
No.
Dodi Li Ben Shaddai.
Bein Shaddai Yalin, right?
Okay.
And in Parak Chet, it should be in pasuk Yud.
Yeah.
We won't run Pasuk out of the range.
Yeah, but should Kamigdalot, right?
Shaddai Kimigdalot.
They're like towers.
Okay, what about building a structure with beams of cedar or planks of cedar? In Parak Aleph, somewhere between 15 and 17, and in Parak Chet, somewhere between 8 and 9. Building something with planks of cedar, beams of cedar.
Koros B'Tein Razim.
Correct. And what do we have in Parak Aleph? Between 15 and 17.
Arez? Luach Arez?
Luach Arez. Okay. In Parak Chet, I need Ahava, somewhere between 5 and 7. Remember, we're working our way down.
It's at 7. Beto Be'ava. Or
We actually have it.
Lechavot
Yeah, we should have it 3 times in Parak Chet, and in Parak Bet, somewhere between
Yeah.
1 and 5 in Parak Bet. I need. Oh, I'll just give you all the terms. I need Ahava, I need Bayit, and I need Dod.
I guess we have Hebiani El Bayit.
Correct.
Mr. Peket Al Doda.
Correct.
Can you say Dod also?
And just for good measure, what about Tachat HaTapuach, under the apple tree?
Yeah, that's hay.
Tapuchim, but you've still got the apple tree. Still got Tachat HaApple tree in both. Okay, what about the refrain now? Smolo Yimino Tachat LaRoshi.
Yeah, that's in Gimel.
Right? And Hishpiyati Atchem Benot Yushalayim.
Right, that's Zion.
That's Zion, so that's
right, so that's Gimel here.
Right. So we getting the picture over here?
Yeah, it's going back.
Very, very intentionally using the exact same terminology in pasuk after pasuk, starting from the beginning of Shir HaShirim, working its way through the first parak, and then at the end, you literally take the 8th parak and invert it, and you've got the same terminology going in order, matching that first parak. So
it's
when
just
you're talking,
apophenia.
so hopefully not. So when you're talking about intentional structure, this is what you're talking about. It's less about just very. I think I have it. I don't know if I have it in here. Oh yeah,
John
here it's in
went
the
to
second
the
one.
store.
No. You have things like this from Francis Landy at the top over here, where it's very vague in general. Like, okay, the lovers go to the garden, and then at the end, in the beginning of Vav, the lovers go to the garden, and then in the end, the lovers leave the garden. And in between, there's something about, like, it's very general. Comparison with the land, and then something very brilliant and unique. That to me is so abstract that you can kind of put whatever label you want on it when you're dealing with a poem that's about love and gardens and whatever. So eventually you're going to find terminology that's similar. I think that's very loose in terms of structure. I think what we just went through before, finding exact words in order in parallel, conveys a lot more of intent than these more abstract attempts to find parallelism.
Right. And again, the title is Shir HaShirim, so what's your point?
So my point is that the whole Megillah is structured in a way where there is parallels that indicate that it's a unit. It's one unified thing, as opposed to just a collection of things that were thrown together. If the author of the beginning and the end,
or the compiler compiled it and headed it.
well, at what point does that compiler then become the author?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. We'll do one more sort of structural analysis, and then I want to get to narrative progression. I don't know if I printed it out or not for you, but Davidson has, I think, a very good analysis of breaking out the book into chunks of themes. So it's easier if you follow along inside, but essentially he views the first, let's say, through Bet Zion, as the two lovers exchanging descriptions of their love for each other. Then you have a theme starting in Perek Gimel of dreams, right? And you go literally in this order. You have dreams of someone, a dream sequence of lost and found. Then you have praise of the man, praise of the woman, and then you go right. Then you get to the sort of the climax of the song. That climax of the song is the invitation by the woman for the man to come to the garden. We talked about the euphemism that's going on over there, and then he accepts that invitation, and then you get a repeat. So that invitation is the end of Perek Daled. He accepts the invitation at the beginning of Perek Hay, and we talked about how Hay is really just right. That's the climax of the story, and then you get the same repeating pattern again. You get another dream sequence, also lost and found. Praise of the man, and then praise of the woman, and then you end with again going and coming and mutual love descriptions of each other. So that's sort of a macro structure of the whole book, and I think that's less, we'll call it abstracted than what I was trying to show you over there with the attempts at chiastic structure. What I'd like to do now is see if we can identify a narrative progression. Let's assume there is some sort of structure. Does that structure translate into telling a story? Does Shir HaShirim tell a story from beginning to end? Is there a progression? Is there a narrative? Can we trace it where something starts at the beginning and then moves through a progression, and then at the end it's different than how it started? And even before we look in the text, yes. I'm just open to, yeah, you think, yes.
One where they're not married and one where they are married.
So when did they get married?
If they're the same people.
Let's.
Why are you taking the idea?
Right,
also
but if you're positing that they weren't married and now they are married.
No, two couples.
Yeah, but that's not a story. That's just saying, hey, once there were two couples. That's not a story. That's just like facts. Like a story is, hey, there was a couple, and then they got married, and then they lived happily ever after. That's a story. That's a progression. That's what
you could have a story tracing two people. Why not?
Yeah, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying that like maybe there's two couples.
Two couples.
Either there's two couples or
there's married and one that's not.
Okay.
But what's the progression? Let's say the couple that's married. How did they start and how did they end? Versus the couple that's not married. How did they start and how did they end? And it's not
yearning and married, and the other one is
frustrated.
Yearning and frustrated. I guess frustrated is a fair assessment.
So you can see that as a progression in the Megillah.
I don't know if you'd call it a progression. I would say it's an analysis. It's a if there are two, there yeah.
So you're saying it's not a narrative.
Not necessarily. It's a Shir HaShirim.
It's just episodes.
It's episodes.
Okay. Other opinions, other takes on Shir HaShirim.
I wonder if it's more like a Pulp Fiction kind of narrative, where things are occurring out of order, and to sort of dramatically charge things a little bit more. Like they show you the end.
Oh, like Memento.
Right, like they show you the end before the beginning, and how did we get there, and like to kind of shake things up a little bit.
Okay. At a certain point, it has to convey meaning, though.
Right. That's the thing. That's what I'm kind of struggling with.
I'll give you an example of someone who tries to trace a narrative. The bottom section over here, you can pass that down. There's another one over here. I don't think I printed out enough, but I'll just give you the list. We start with introduction. Then we have a dialogue between lovers. The woman recalls a visit from her lover. The woman addresses the daughters of Yerushalayim. Then we have a sighting of a royal wedding progression. Then the man describes his lover's beauty. The woman addresses the Benos Yerushalayim again. The man describes his lover who visits him. The observers describe a woman's beauty, and then there's an appendix. Does that read to you as a story.
Yeah.
What's the theme of the story then?
It doesn't trace really what goes on in Shir HaShirim.
That's an attempt to trace what is going on in Shir HaShirim. That's their analysis of like, not necessarily chapter by chapter, but thematically. Here's, the first 6 psukim are the introduction. 7 through Bet Zion is the dialogue between the lovers, and then Chet through Yud Zion is recalling a visit from her lover, and yada yada. He goes through the whole Megillah with those with those we'll call them headings, I guess. And the question is, does that read as a narrative to you?
Was this citing the royal wedding procession?
That was that was the Mitato Shel Shlomo, right? The Shlomo's caravan came out, and they're describing
There's
how it's
60
inlaid with
dudes.
gold and everything, right? 60 people guarding it. That whole scene.
May not be the most cohesive or in order as Charles said, but it's definitely reads as one group of characters.
So I think what you're getting at, and you can correct me if I'm misreading this, is that it feels like you got something out of it, right? When you read through Shir HaShirim, you might not have heard a story, but you got some sort of meaning. Something came across to you. So what I would propose to you is, if we look at this as a song as opposed to a narrative, it's easier to understand how meaning is conveyed. So I don't know how many people are Leonard Cohen fans, but I just picked this example out of the hat. Right, Hallelujah. So that's a very famous song. There's a bunch of stanzas in the song. There's no necessarily like progression from one stanza to the next. They're all thematic. They all revolve around the chorus, and they tie into a feeling. The song definitely has it comes across as, brokenhearted, or whatever the emotions that you're getting from the song. You're not getting because he's told you a story. You're getting because you've gotten different snippets that are all tied into the general theme that the music is conveying.
It's not about information, it's about feelings.
It's definitely about feelings.
Right.
And
that's what a song is for. A song is not to tell you, here's how you put together your IKEA chair. A song is, hey, feel something.
Okay. Even songs without lyrics.
Right.
Do that.
It's supposed to feel. You're supposed to feel something, right? The chord progressions and the thing, the bass chord, the root, and then the tension, and then the resolution.
You weren't joking about the musician.
What's that?
You weren't joking about the musician.
No.
Trust me, I don't know that much.
No, but that's part of musical theory, is like, there's the tonic, right? And you hear a certain chord, and then your ear is waiting to hear that chord again. And whether it's classical music or jazz, and it kind of goes off into different themes, and then your ear keeps waiting for, like, when am I going to get back to the chord, to the tonic, right? And the tonic is like the bass chord that you start off on. So if you, I mean, I can't play like the note, but whatever, C sharp, right? That's how you start the piece, and then your ear keeps waiting for that chord to be played again in that not that octave. What's the
scale?
That scale. So in
classical
mode, right? So in classical music, they'll play with you, right? They'll play that same note, but at a different scale. So it's almost the same, and then they'll go off again, exploring different themes, but your ear keeps waiting for you to get back to home base, so to speak. And that's the refrain. In popular music, you've got a chorus, right? There are a lot of people who will identify the Benot Yushalayim as the chorus, because we get that refrain over and over again. Hishpiyate etchem Benot Yushalayim. It seems to come out of nowhere sometimes, but it ties you back, like, oh, I heard that before. I heard that phrase before. And even when we were reading through the Megillah, there are a lot of phrases that sound familiar and kind of help you feel grounded. Like, okay, that's familiar, so I'm going to take that in a different way than this new idea that I now have to sort of chew over and explore a little bit. Is this making sense, or does it sound kind of foofy and in the air?
I hear.
Both. That's a fair answer. Okay, so I guess the question is, if there is no structure, let's play devil's advocate. If there is no structure, can there be meaning?
Yeah. Mishlei, that's no structure.
So I guess it's a fair question.
Right,
Is
the question
Mishlei
is-
a
right.
unified book, or is it just a collection of
Pithy
aphorisms?
sayings,
Yeah.
right.
Which
Right.
has meaning.
Right, but each
Each one-
individual
oh, so that's a
concept
very good
has
point.
meaning.
Each one has meaning.
structure.
But you
Yeah,
wouldn't
right.
say there's like a. I mean, I
Right.
guess the theme of Mishlei
Yeah.
is.
Right, Shir was different. It's not a proof
Could
of
you
concept.
say there's a theme of Mishlei? What's the theme of Mishlei? Just, hey, here's a bunch
Musar.
of wise stuff.
Right.
Mhm.
Wisdom.
Right.
Parable. Marshall's parable.
But again, each one is wildly different.
Yeah.
I mean, except for Esha Chayil, which
Shir
sort of
would seem
seems...
to have, you would think doesn't have as many messages. Like, you can't say each pasuk has a different message. That's different. That's maybe it's just a few messages. That seems to me all one message.
What's the
I
message?
Well, whatever it is. I don't know what it is.
We're not sure. We're not sure what the message is, but we know there's only one.
I think there's only one.
I like that. I like that. So okay, I guess
At least one and at most one. I don't think it's zero. I don't think it's two.
okay, that's fair. Are you still set on that there is a narrative progression?
Necessarily one narrative progression.
Right. There's at least one, if not more, narrative progressions.
At least one.
So if there is, what would you say is the theme or the meaning that you can take from that progression? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, and if you want to think about it, that's fair too. Because again, the goal is to try to pull out some meaning from this book. And I don't know if I furthered that or took us a little further away from that by exploring the structure. But my attempt here was to say, even if there is no structure, because it's song and not narrative in the traditional sense of narrative, you can still find meaning in it, as long as you look at it as song and not as narrative.
Well, the structure we went through, sort of, because it's not so literal, it almost like you need that sort of like redundancy from the beginning to the end in terms of structure.
Why?
Because it doesn't, it has to sink in again. Like you sort of have to like, the meaning, whatever that meaning is, we don't know what that meaning is yet,
Right.
but if you just kind of went through...
If you only heard it once,
Yeah.
it wouldn't sink in.
Like the general repetition of any stanza in a song, right?
Right.
Or a choir.
Right. The idea of a song is I'm going to explore a theme from a bunch of different, aspects or perspectives, but hopefully if I hit you with it from enough different angles, you got something out of it.
Right.
I think that's how I would look at HaShirim as you can't necessarily point to any one part of it and say, okay, here, if you just excerpt that, that's the meaning, that's the theme. But you got the theme, you got the feeling from all the pieces kind of working in tandem.
And the feeling you get.
That it's a love song. That it's an exploration of love.
And
That's not yet meaning. That's just feeling. What I want to try to do next week and the following week is go from feeling to meaning. Good?
Fair enough.
Okay.
Sure.